Doing well, doing well. Look at you. It's been how long? 7 years?
Oh man. Yeah, probably. I don't know if I caught. I went back a little bit in 2014. I don't know if I caught you there though. So probably 2013.
Yeah, the last time I saw you was in a biomechanics lab, and Dr. Sato was like checking the weightlifting shoes and say, "Oh man, Austin took one." Do you remember that?
Yep.
Oh man,
Yep.
you
I
you
was
know you
I was
kind of
scrambling to get him back to the lab.
yeah you kind of famous in Taiwan. Do you know why?
Do I want to know why?
Yeah, because you and Sato got a one publication in Taiwan. And then all of a sudden, like people wanted to check the baseball strength and conditioning, found that paper, and used that paper as a reference.
Oh, the one we wrote on baseball strength conditioning.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah,
nice.
I never was that. That wasn't published in English, was it? Or was it? Like I wasn't familiar with the journal.
Oh yeah, that was in English. That was allowed to publish in English.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know if Dr. Sato ended up translating that or what.
No,
He took the lead on that project.
yeah. I think maybe I can send you one the other day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So how's life?
It's pretty good. We're slowing down here for a couple weeks.
Uh-huh.
I say that we had some interviews earlier today, but this is kind of our Christmas break here for a little bit, and then once they're back in the office in January, it'll be really fast,
Okay.
all the way through spring training, and then yeah, just spring training comes in a hurry, and then everything kind of takes off from there.
Gotcha. Before we start to talk, like those are my graduate students. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, just say hi and just kind of short, brief, introduce yourself to Coach Triggers. How about you, Sherry?
So, hi, Coach. My name is Sherry, and I'm currently working on my second year of master's degree. And I'm working as an intern as a strength conditioning coach in our school's taekwondo team. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Sherry.
Nice to meet you too.
Next one, James.
Okay. Hi, Coach. I'm James Zhang. Now I study in a PhD program. Now I serve the baseball team, do some sports science thing. Yeah, service for baseball. Yeah.
Nice.
Boy. It's your turn.
Oh, hi, Coach. I'm Marcus. I'm working as an assistant in the baseball team too. I'm a first grade in graduate, as a graduate student. Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
Eugene.
Hi, Coach. My name is Carrie. I'm working with Sherry right now. It's my first year of the graduate student study.
Great.
You hear that?
郑启.
Hi, Coach. I'm Ian, and now it's my second year in graduate student, and I'm work for the baseball team together with Marcus.
Okay, sweet.
嘉宏.
Hi, Coach. I'm Steven. I work for Taekwondo team right now, and with Sherry and Karen. And nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Away.
Hello. Good morning, Coach, or good evening in your time. I'm William, and I'm also the second year student in the master degree, and I work for the basketball school team as the SNC coach.
Nice.
Yeah, nice to meet you, coach.
Nice to meet you.
Wayne.
Hi, Coach. I'm Wayne. I'm a graduate student and I assist my taekwondo team in my school and swim team in strength training. Thank you.
Nice.
大哥 just say hi. Come on, I cannot see you. Are you a dog something?
我刚刚就跟你讲了，
Just say
没有看
hi.
到。
No, we cannot see you. There's one more student. He's a undergraduate student.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see the symbol, but my Taiwanese isn't very good reading.
Hi, I'm George. I'm a college student, and I work for basketball team.
Okay.
Harold.
You're okay.
Harold.
Just recently retired from baseball team and became the intern of my team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
So those are the students that work with me, and I am their major professor. But we also have a strength and conditioning program in master degree level. Yeah. So as you can hear that we majorly work with Taekwondo. That's the martial arts sports. Men's basketball.
I did Taekwondo as a kid.
Really?
From I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 years old. So I know nothing about the competitive sport, but I did train in it for I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
That's rare. When the time I was in the U.S., I couldn't find a place to see the Taekwondo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is in Abilene, Texas, and it was just I don't know. It was a small gym run by a couple that grew up in Korea, and my parents basically put me in it because it was it was really good for discipline. And they don't academic stuff too. I don't know. I got really flexible too because we stressed.
Yeah. Oh, really? Well, you know what? We work with Taekwondo, the Olympic gold medalist. Our head coach, was the gold medalist from 2004 in Athens, and the silver in 2008 Beijing. So that's our coach. That's the level we are working with.
Really cool.
Yeah. All right. So hey, fill me in. How did you become the director? How did you start? Basically, because I don't know, you for many years, and the other day I heard your name. That was the head of performance. So how did you start everything?
I mean, part of it was good preparation, and a lot of it was just being at the right place at the right time. So I prior to when we were together at ETSU, I had studied applied health science as an undergraduate, got my bachelor's there, which that's typically more pre-health. So med school, physical therapy, stuff like that. But I wanted to stay in sport and ended up at the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid, New York, which is where a lot of the U.S. winter sports train. And I was there with Brad DeWeese, who then recommended I go to ETSU to learn from Doc and Dr. Sands and Dr. Sato. So after I wrapped up there, I went to ETSU, started studying sport physiology and performance there. And you, of course, remember Chris Bailey.
Yeah.
Chris had just worked with the Padres. And I had actually grown up in a baseball family. My dad ran a bunch of college programs, managed a little bit with the Pirates, Pittsburgh Pirates minor leagues. So I I kind of knew I wanted to do pro ball for a little bit, just because like my dad liked it but couldn't stay in it just because of the like really hard on like travel, family, stuff like that. So he ended up going back to college. But with that and talking to Chris, like I wanted to do it for a few years, and so I reached out to I don't know, probably 10 teams or so about doing an internship or something like that, and ended up talking to 3 and was lucky enough to get 2 offers to do a like summer internship. One of those was with the Royals.
Okay.
So I left school like a couple weeks early. Like I finished all coursework, left school a couple weeks early, and I was strength and conditioning coach in the Appalachian League, which is like the lowest level. It's like rookie ball for that summer. And then I went back in the fall, finished the rest of my coursework. So I kind of overloaded that fall so I could take the next semester off and go to a full season club again as the strength and conditioning coach. And so that was my second season in baseball. And then I went back and finished my master's research that following fall. And then I spent 2 more seasons with the Royals in the minor leagues as a strength and conditioning coach. But also like during that time, as I got to know our staff better, our medical staff better, become more influential in like our training and our monitoring processes, I started doing like a lot of the sports science and athlete monitoring, kind of some of the base principles that we would do at like East Tennessee State at the Center of Excellence. And everybody knew I had an appetite for that. I like helped our major league staff out with a lot of the performance technology they were using. I started to get to know our analytics staff in the front office, now research and development. And so really sports science and Major League Baseball kind of started to take off in 2016. And like owners started asking questions to our front office, who started asking questions to our performance staff, so like strength and conditioning and sports medicine. And they were like, oh yeah, we actually have the perfect person. He studied it in his master's. And so I was really lucky and basically had the opportunity to write up that job description for like what sports science would look like in our environment. And so in October of 2016, they made me the sports science coordinator and gave me the opportunity to start to build our sports science department within the Royals organization from that time moving forward. And then my current role, and I can talk about kind of the evolution of that, but my current role I've been in since November of 2019, which is Senior Director of Performance Science, which performance science has kind of grown quite a bit within the organization and the scale of what we do. My role now is a little bit more front office, a little more involved in major league operations and supporting the major league club, but then a lot of like little bits in other areas, so like international scouting, amateur scouting, still do a fair amount in player development, and oversee. I am accountable to all the strength and conditioning from top to bottom, and then sports nutrition. So performance science, sports nutrition, and strength and conditioning are the areas like that we would say in my vertical. I'm not sure if that makes sense with the terms. And then like across the horizontal, I support kind of all the other departments. So pitching, hitting, scouting, front office, analytics, and like all of that side of it.
So that took you 7 years. So people curious about like how does a major league strength and conditioning coach look like in a day? So can you give us some like I know you are a different role at the moment, but like you were the strength and conditioning coach. So people, I think my students are curious about, okay, so what's the first thing you do when you walk in the weight room, and how does that operate like in a daily basis?
So take one step back. I will say when you're looking at leadership roles in strength and conditioning within Major League Baseball, there are kind of two models you'll see, especially at the Major League level. Actually, I should probably talk about the structure of these staffs. So you have the Major League team, which you're all familiar with, but like underneath the Major League team, there's a much more extensive like development pathway that is the minor leagues compared to most other professional sports. So like the NBA just has the G League, the NHL like just has like the American Hockey League or Western Hockey League. Like usually there's just one level under whatever Major League Soccer has the like A League like right under that. So baseball is a little bit unique here in that like we have this long like extensive most like domestic players from the United States can get drafted when they're 18 years old, and then we can sign international players, whether that's from like Latin America or Asia, at like late 16, early 17, which they'll typically go to our academy in the Dominican Republic. So we have a pretty extensive player development system like underneath the Major League club. And so when you look at strength and conditioning staffs, that tends to reflect that. And so you'll typically have like your head Major League strength and conditioning coach that's dedicated to the Major League team. Sometimes that person oversees like all strength and conditioning, so like Major League and player development. Sometimes they're just laser focused on the big leagues. So like in our organization, like I'm accountable to strength and conditioning everywhere, but we have a Major League strength and conditioning coach that's laser focused on the Major League club. And then we have an assistant Major League strength and conditioning coach that is also our Latin America coordinator. So we have an academy in just outside Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, and we run 2 teams out of there. So we'll have like upwards of 60, 70 players there at various times of the year. And so he also like coordinates that. And then we have a minor league strength and conditioning coordinator that oversees all of player development. We have an assistant strength and conditioning coordinator. And then each of our minor league teams has a dedicated strength and conditioning coach that's like with that team, travels everywhere. And so that's kind of the structure. So in terms of like being a strength coach in professional baseball, it kind of depends on where you are in that hierarchy, because like some of the directors are more like administrative roles, you know, versus like and like the minor league strength and conditioning coordinator is more hiring strength coaches, training strength coaches, developing strength coaches, and then creating continuity across all of our teams, because there's a lot of player movement. Like if a player's in ball and he's doing really well and he goes to high A or goes to double A, we want like consistent physical training methods where there's a seamless transition like between levels. And so the strength and conditioning coordinator like ensures that we have a really consistent process. Not that you're like telling the strength and conditioning coach what to do. It's very like principle oriented, where this is like our methodology approach to training. And then they're kind of the one executing that. The affiliate strength and conditioning coach is the one executing that kind of in the day-to-day, like with the players. So like where you want me to go within that, give me some direction. I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah, so ever since we work with baseball, that kind of a stereotype about don't do overhead stuff, overhead lifting, and don't do weightlifting because it's gonna hurt your wrist, it's gonna hurt your shoulder. So I kind of talked to Chris Bailey about this, and I don't know, how about your organization? Can you, are you allowed to do it, or is the organization allow you or your strength coaches to do it? And if not, how will you cooperate with other training methodologies?
We have no issue lifting overhead. That's fine. We don't do like full snatches or clean and jerk per se. for various reasons. We actually don't do a lot of Olympic lifting, primarily because of like facilities and continuity of training, and there's a lot of reasons for that. John and I are actually working on an article right now for Sportsmith that kind of explains like why, but our harsh reality is like one of the main reasons is a lot of the training environments that we're in, like during the season. So like when the team's on the road in the minor leagues, they'll have to lift at like a public gym, like whatever city we're in, we'll have to coordinate. And they're usually like nice gyms, but you also can't count on having like 10 racks or platforms and be able to do like pulls from the floor and drop your weight. So like we've tried to do a lot of Olympic derivatives, but just from like a consistency of training standpoint, there's too many situations where we can't do Olympic movements. And so it messes up like our like consistency and exercise selection for the guys. That said, we have no issue like overhead, which part of that, like you do need to have a really good assessment process for the shoulder girdle, which we do. So we measure, internal, external rotation, horizontal abduction, like scaption, range of motion, and then strength in all of those planes, and like scapular endurance with like a prone scapular endurance test. So like you have to really thoroughly assess the shoulder, and there are certainly particular individuals that don't lift overhead just because like when you load the shoulder in that position, the adaptations that their shoulder is made just doesn't like jive with them. But by and large, like we have no issue lifting overhead. We do a lot of like clean grip shoulder press. We do a lot of dumbbell work just because of like relative to the barbell. I mean, one of it's again just like practical reasons, like you almost always have access to dumbbells. But even like compared to like, I mean, it's still open chain exercise, but when you're tied to the bar and your hands are locked in that position, like relative to having dumbbells or a kettlebell where the athlete can kind of internally or externally rotate to like self-select like a good path to get into that position. We tend to run into less issues there, but yeah, we do clean grip shoulder presses. We do a lot of push press variations like dumbbell push jerk. We do like a lot of like core work, like rollouts, overhead, a lot of stability work, like cable presses. And then we do a ton, this more happens in the athletic training room with the sports medicine team, but there's also a lot more like overhead specific type work. So like plyo balls, like rebounders, like trampoline, like body blade, like an oats tube, like obviously like shoulder tubing, things of that nature. And then we'll train a lot of shoulder stability overhead as well. So like loaded carries overhead, weighted carries here, which is also nice. You get a lot of like lateral column and serratus anterior work with that. So yeah, I mean, like philosophically, it's like and I don't want to like, we have players that don't lift overhead because it just doesn't work with their shoulder, but by and large, like philosophically, like if you're going to do one of the most violent movements in sports, overhead, and it's like one of the fastest movements in sports, and the humerus is going to rotate at 7,000 degrees per second in the shoulder girdle, and then you're going to decelerate that, like you ought to be able to grab a 40-pound dumbbell in a very controlled manner and do that. And not only that, like in terms of like the overall like strength and health and durability and force production capacity, the shoulder girdle, like you need to develop that to protect the shoulder, right?
Yeah, I was talking to my student that that thing I remember, like when we were in the Wayron back in the ETSU, like you were doing like hand snatch, like 160 pounds overhead, like in snap. Like I was talking to my student, like like Austin was so powerful, and then all of a sudden you became the major league strength and conditioning coach. Like that must be like very, I cannot say the struggle, but maybe some conflict, and then to your own training experiences. Because as far as I know, like when you look at the internet and when you go check on YouTube, and you see like they do power clean, power snatch, overhead, like in collegiate level, like pretty much like every D1 school, they can do that. But all of a sudden, when they got picked to the pro level, and they just stop.
Yeah.
Suddenly stop. And then they start to complain like, oh, it's going to hurt my shoulder. It's going to hurt my wrist. And nothing happened. I mean, I cannot say there's nothing when they were college kids, but they're definitely more cared about, you know, more sensitive about like here and here and here, there, like when they go pro. You know, is that true?
You have large populations of 21-year-old Division I baseball players like doing these things with very reasonable injury rates, and it's like suddenly they can't do that when they're 22. Yeah, the one thing I will say in terms of like tolerance to injury, there does, like, especially in professional baseball and especially with prospects, like there does have to be like a really low tolerance for training related injuries compared to maybe like a collegiate environment where you have more of like a I don't want to say the athletes are replaceable, but you know, like, you know, when you look at the draft, like a draft class, like when you get an opportunity to especially like high picks. So in the 2018 season, like the Royals weren't very good. We had a bad season, which means you're picking really high in the draft. We drafted a kid named Bobby Witt Jr., who's just an unbelievable shortstop, one of the best athletes I've ever worked with. Paid him $8 million, and like, so like, it's rare to even get an opportunity to like acquire that kind of talent, just because like even like this last year in the draft, there wasn't even a player as talented as Bobby Witt Jr. I mean, the kid's like the number 3 overall prospect in all of Major League Baseball. He finished the year with us in AAA, and he's like 20 years old. But like the talent is like really rare, and you can't just like replace that guy. And so from a training standpoint, like our tolerance for like him getting hurt in the weight room is like around 0. So like,
you cannot afford it.
Mean like scared to train. But when you think about like the number of players that we have, like 180 minor league players, like not even on our 40-man roster, you know, they're going to be training twice a week all year. Like we can't even have a 1% injury rate in the weight room. Like you do have to be like a little bit more cautious, just because of the exposures. Like if the wrong person gets hurt, it's just not going to go well at all. So like, from a risk management standpoint, again, like, I mean, some organizations are like very risk averse. We're not like overly scared of doing things, but we're also willing to know that like we're not quite reaching the physical capabilities that everybody's like capable of if we were to train like as hard as possible. Not that it's like wise to train to failure every time. Like we know that's not optimal anyway, but like we are willing to get to like 90% of what they could be physically for an extremely low injury rate, relative to like 100% will break a few more people and have like more weight room injuries, but like we'll get better physically when you know you have like the talent, which the draft provides, when you know they're good enough, like talent wise, to reach the level you need them to reach. Like you can be a little bit less aggressive training wise, whereas like in an amateur environment, a lot of times in college environment, like the talent may not quite be there, And so you have to like push like training wise like a little bit harder because you're trying to like overcome a little bit of a talent gap there, right?
See. That goes to oh, sorry about the bell. Yeah, we're at school. We still have a bell. Yeah. Yeah, so the question leads to how you manage it, like for the whole season. For example, like you have the starting pitcher, and you have relief, you have closer. Yeah, even I know you have that kind of philosophical idea about not getting them to get hurt, but you know it's easier for starting pitchers since they have like one work day with 4 days off. But how about relief or closer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually you divided those out pretty good. That's like you have your starting pitchers, you have your relief pitchers. Closers, I wouldn't really say. I would group them in with relievers. Relievers, and then within your position player group, you basically have your everyday players.
Yeah.
And then you have your bench guys. So that's kind of that's kind of the four groups I would say you have. Starting pitchers are really easy. Like that's easy money. You got 5 days, like every time, super predictable. You can apply like great. All the training theories are on the table. Like that's easy. The relievers are actually like pretty similar to the position players a little bit. The trick with the relievers is in this environment, like you don't know when they're going to pitch. At the lower levels in the minor leagues, it's a little more scheduled, so we can plan a little bit more. But like at the major league level, pitcher utilization is exclusively about winning games. So guys will pitch like back to back. We'll have guys not pitch for 6 days because he's like the last person in the bullpen, and like he's our worst reliever, and we've been in close games and we haven't been winning or losing by enough for him to pitch. And so like relievers basically lift 2 times a week or once a series. And with that, like the trick is they always have to be ready to pitch, right? So the 2 ways that we kind of work with that is one, especially when we're at home, they can lift after the game, which sounds crazy because it's like 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, we'll just like wait for them to pitch, and then they'll pitch and like they'll pitch the 6th or 6th and 7th inning, and then they'll come right in and lift like right then. And so we're pairing that together, and then they'll be good. So post game lift is an easy way to do it. Otherwise, and like some guys that have been lifting a long time, like they're not bothered at all by lifting ahead of pitching, so they'll lift at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like go like do their workout and everything. And I mean, they're not going to be pitching the game till maybe like 9. So you still have like a 7-hour like recovery window built in there. But a lot of that is like in order to like manage fatigue, we do primarily like total body lifts, and it'll be like high quality, like low volume, high intensity, like really high quality work. And then you can also like based on like how they're pitching, you can also modulate that intensity a little bit too. Like if they pitch 2 days in a row, like we can almost bet on them getting a couple days off just because their arm's going to need it. And so like they pitch that second game, let's really capitalize on this opportunity to push a little bit harder, knowing that we're going to have a couple days off the back of that. So it's very much for the strength and conditioning coach, and it's easier at the lower levels because like relievers at the lower levels will like pitch and then be off for 2 or 3 days and then pitch. It's almost scheduled. But at the upper levels, there's a lot. Like the strength and conditioning coach has a really, really important job in like working with the pitching coach and the manager and the players themselves to know like what their preferences are, how they feel about lifting, but also like forecasting to the best of your ability, like what that pitcher's use is likely to be. And then like kind of crank that dial up a little bit when you can, or crank it down a little bit when you need to, and they need to be fresh, but like they've been 3 days without lifting. So yeah, like for relievers and really position players are the same way. Like it's about managing quality, being really consistent with your work, not going more than like 3 or 4 days without a lift so you don't get sore or anything like that. And then the last group and position players again are very similar in that, I mean, they're playing every day. They come in, they lift early. A few guys will lift after the game, but like train a couple times a week, make sure high intensity, low volume, really good quality, and you'll manage fatigue. We'll periodize the program to expose them to like favorable variation in volume and intensity, but like we're never doing like 10s at 80%. You know,
Yeah.
you see that it still tends to be like pretty like favor like high intensity, low volume. And then the last group, the position players that don't play every day, they train not, some of them train more frequently than others, but their volume will be a little bit higher. And part of that is just and they'll also do more like outside of the gym than other people in terms of like sprint work, change of direction, more defense. Because if you think about like we have a lot of injuries in baseball just because like if you get hurt, you can't like take, you don't have a week till the next game. And so if you can't play, you can't play. And so we do have guys like miss time somewhat regularly. And so, and this is catchers are the big one. Like if I'm a backup catcher, I may only be catching 1 or 2 games a week. But the thing is, if our starting catcher goes down at any point, like you have to be ready like the next day to catch like 10 out of the next 12 games in a row. So like over the next 2 weeks, 14 days, you're going to catch 12 of those games, and you've been catching 2 games. Yeah. And so so strength coaches have to be really diligent with those backup guys to make sure that one, their work in the weight room is great, and then they can push them harder in the weight room because they don't have to play as much. And you can work around, okay, they're not in lineup, like they can train harder. But you also have to like train more just to make sure that like when something changes, there's an injury, somebody goes down, they can step in immediately and they're fully prepared for the demands of playing every day.
Got you.
So also as a strength coach, you got to understand what are the demands of like a catcher versus an outfielder versus a corner infielder. So that like both inside and outside the gym, you're keeping your backups ready to be able to do that like every day should something with team dynamics change and they have to step into that role.
Yeah, cool. So speaking of discussion things with head coaches and other supporting staff, for example, like athletic trainers and the people looking for sports analytics, or even just position players, coaches, like how would you manage that? Because so many different professions, and then what's the strength and conditioning coach's role? Especially like you are a hybrid at Bowen, but you were strength and conditioning coach. So how do you approach, and what was the appropriate way to approach?
Yeah, I think the first thing is like as the complexity of baseball has grown, and it's great too because like now we can provide way better support to our players than we used to, because like now we have strength conditioning specialists, we have physical therapists or physiotherapists, we have sports scientists, we have like data, like quantitative professionals, and obviously like coaches, the traditional roles. We have dietitians. So we have like all of these people with like expertise in all of these areas that we know are important for performance. The challenge is now it becomes really difficult to like, how do you manage that bigger people and how do I fit like into that larger group? And so I think the two keys to that are one, or probably more than two. One of them certainly is like respecting everybody else's craft and understanding that like everything has to be athlete centered. Like it's not about like I may care more about like the physical qualities of the player, making sure like they're fit enough and strong enough to do their job, versus like other areas. But like you have to also recognize that really it's about winning games. Like everything's about winning games and trying to win a championship, and how the player fits into that like larger goal. And then for the player, it has to be like player centered, not like everything's athlete centered. And then like if you put the athlete at the center of the equation, and then you as the strength conditioning coach, the dietitian, the sport coach, the like, if you all gather around and say, okay, like Mark's our dude, what like where is he now, and what do we need him to be able to do in order to help us win a championship? And then you identify what those priorities are, and then you all have a role to play in accomplishing those goals, and you work together to do that, like very collaboratively. And that's the biggest difference over the last like 5 years, at least within Major League Baseball in the United States. The level of collaboration between disciplines and those groups working together, like hand in hand on projects to like help solve performance problems, has gotten like way better than it used to be. So like used to is just like strength coach, stay in the weight room, make sure they're fit, make sure they move really well, and make sure nothing physical is going to get in the way of them doing well. Like that's like not a good plan, especially because a lot of performance problems are gonna scale across like different areas, right? Like if a player needs to lose 10 pounds, like one, they're obviously, you as the strength and conditioning coach have an important role in terms of exercise prescription, but the dietitian needs to be involved as well, because you obviously have to like make adjustments nutritionally to be able to do that. While the player's losing weight and training a lot, they're not going to be able to do as much like technical or tactical work. So the sport coach has to know that, or if he tries to do what he would typically do, we're going to run this guy into the ground, right? And so, and on it goes. Like you have to like work as a team around that player and understand like where, like me as a strength and conditioning coach, like where that fits into like what is the overall objective, and make sure that that's like coordinated between groups. And so, which requires obviously like really good collaboration, really good communication with all those groups, and like respect for the role that other people's areas play in like in performance for that player.
Yeah. So Austin, so how often do you have this kind of conversation? Like say, do you have like a regular meeting, or you just walk into their office and say, hey, we need to talk about these athletes and let's talk about it? Is that like the former thing, or is more like just talk to people?
That's going to be different in every team or every organization. Like the way that it works in like our organization is like the two main like connectors to the manager and to the like manager who's ultimately responsible for everything, like the major league manager, is myself and our director of medical services. And so like we're kind of the ones, and it's not to say like the strength coach can't go talk to the manager, the strength coach can't talk to the hitting coach. That happens organically like all the time, but like we do have 26 guys there, and like those guys are trying to make sure they're on top of everything that's going on in the cage and on the mound everywhere. So like I deliberately like every day spend time like everywhere on the field. So I'm in our front office like upstairs. But then when the workout, like when we come up on our workout, I'll change into dry fit clothes and I'll go down and I'll be out at sides with our pitchers. I'll be at batting practice, like talking to the hitting coaches, listening to them. I'll check on conditioning. And then when we come back in, I'll go into the athletic training room and talk to our sports medicine staff. Hey, how's it going? How's so-and-so? He ran a lot in the game last night. How's so-and-so? Like he got hit with a pitch. Like this dude's hamstring. He's come back from a hamstring. Like where are we at with him? How does running progression go? And then go to the weight room, talk to the strength conditioning coach. Hey, how's everything going? And so like I'm trying to gather as much information about like where the priorities are with all of those guys. And then I know like what to focus on with our manager and our bench coach, who's also our quality control coach. So it depends. Like it's also really common for the strength conditioning coach to be like under the director of performance or director of sports medicine. So like usually you'll have your weight room and your sports medicine area like ideally connected to one another. Ours are unfortunately our offices are not. The strength conditioning and medical offices are not one, which I wish they were. But like those two groups are always like communicating like really, really closely because there's so much crossover. And back to the collaboration piece, like in baseball, like if there's a major injury, like if it's a UCL reconstruction and you gotta have surgery, like we ship them to Arizona and they'll be with our rehabilitation team. But like most injuries that happen, they'll stay like with the club. And we have a ton of injuries where the player doesn't go on the IL. They either straight up play through the injury or they'll just take a couple days and they'll try to get ahead of it, where they don't have to go on the IL and then put them back there. But that could change how you're training the player in the weight room for the next 2 weeks when they're actually trying. And they may not even be sprinting in the game. That's a weird thing about baseball. Like if I tweak my hamstring and I'm one of the best power hitters on the team, then it's like, and I can run at 3/4 speed without like pain, then it's like, hey man, like stay in the lineup, hit the ball. If you're out, you're out. Like don't try to leg out a single. So like we do have the ability to play through injuries versus a sport like soccer. Like
that's not gonna happen.
Like the ball gets wet, like you just can't. Like it doesn't work that way. So I got off your original question there. But it varies, but usually that's like coordinating with your medical director or the head coach.
So tell us a story about confrontation. That's the thing. And that happens everywhere. Like even when in Taiwan, that happens everywhere. So tell us a story about that.
Let's see.
And I know like we need to respect others' craft, but we are Dr. Stone students. Like we're supposed to have our confidence in something, And so how do you adjust that kind of feeling?
I mean and especially like if you're going to work in professional sport, like you have to understand, especially at the top, like at the major league level, like people spend their entire career like fighting to get to like that, and like your job is literally on the line like every week. Like if players are like bad enough, then like the coach just gets fired like one day. Like there's no like, it's not as bad as the National Football League, but it is like anybody can get fired at any time. And so like people want very badly to keep their jobs. And so when the wrong player is not going good, or the wrong couple players are not going good, like you have to it requires a lot of empathy to, we're responsible for the physical training. And I like, and I have a reason for going here. because usually it's strength coach versus the sport coach, right? And or like that's the common. Like when you look at like what we have to do in the realm of like performance and wins and losses or whatever, like if we do a good job of like applying scientific methods and principles to training, and we plan that well, we execute that well, we coach it up, and our players are getting bigger, faster and stronger, and they're moving well, and that like we can feel good about that. And if the team loses or a person's not hitting or a pitcher is struggling, it's like, well, I have my monitoring data and he's gotten stronger. He's as strong as our pitchers that are good. And like like it's easy for us to be like, well, it's not my fault that he's not performing well. But like if you're a coach, like you don't get that luxury. Like if a guy is not pitching well, like you might be fired like next week if he doesn't start getting guys out. And so you have to appreciate like what a coach goes through. Like when people aren't performing well enough, like it is an intense pressure of like, oh my gosh, if this guy doesn't start hitting, like I am out of here. Like I'm not even gonna keep my job. And so like one, just recognizing that like the stress or pressure that they're under is like immense. But one of my bigger I'm trying to, I mean, I have stories. I'm trying to think of one that would be like moderately entertaining. But I'm not getting a great one. This goes to like, it's important to document your training. I had a reliever lift before the game in AA. I say before the game, it was like 3:00. Very typical, really strong kid, good athlete. His brother played in the NFL. And he squatted like 275 pounds, which is very typical for him. Like, and I had it written on the board, whatever. Well, he pitched that night and like gave it up and we lost the game and it was like his fault. And he was fine. Like he had lifted plenty of times, but our manager was like really not happy because we blew the lead too. Like we were winning and then we weren't. And like this guy like gave it up. And so he's like storming through the weight room to go in another room and he looks at the whiteboard and he sees that like the guy had like squatted like 275 pounds and like came straight to the office and started like screaming at me over like why he was doing that. And like at the time I like I like just generally explained like it's normal for him. Like he wasn't tired. Did you talk to the player? Like he said his legs were fine. Like that didn't particularly like I kind of weathered the storm at the time. And then a couple days later, I went back through our training logs and found like other instances where he had done similar training and pitched well. And like once things had calmed down, I like went back to the manager and was like, look, we can make adjustments. And we try to work around this where this doesn't happen, but and like we can make adjustments going forward, but know that like here are 3 or 4 outings where we did have similar training and he pitched well. I talked to the player about how his legs were feeling. He said they felt great. He just didn't have his slider that night. Like again, if we need to make adjustments, we can, but know that we have had success. Like this player has had success in the past, like under similar conditions. And so the documentation piece, not like to like prove your point or absolve yourself. But I mean, you really might want to know too, because like, what if like all his bad outings are like daisy lifts? Like then we do need to make an adjustment. So it's not about like building a case for yourself. But it is, important. And I think a lot of it is like those types of events are really good for education too. For example, like I had a shortstop that had like a minor forearm flexor strain, and like everything was fine except when he like really cut it loose to throw across the diamond. He had like forearm tightness, and so we had to shut the kid down from throwing. Like, so he wasn't in games, and literally nothing bothered him except like max effort throwing across the diamond, which he couldn't play because obviously you need to be able to throw across to be able to play. So he wasn't in games, but he was in the weight room and he was lifting, and he was actually doing, funny enough, he was doing overhead shoulder press. But that's the thing, like like the forearm it's an isometric stable control. And really, you don't even have to grip the bar, right? Like you can just like and so he was doing clean grip shoulder press, and the manager just happened to like walk by, and this wasn't as epic of a blow up as the previous one. He was like, "Can we please not be doing military press until player X is back into games, please? Like, what's more important, like lifting weights or the game?" And it's like, obviously the game is more important than like doing that particular exercise. But like, you also, like, this coach didn't really lift when he played, and so like he doesn't know that, like, oh, it like throwing where you have like a very like a eccentric immediately followed by a powerful concentric ballistic action versus just a very low level like isometric contraction. And so like, again, like let things cool off, and then I went in like, hey, I'm happy to just like not do that until he's back into games, but like the exercise is important for shoulder stability, especially while he's not throwing as much. And like he doesn't feel anything. There's actually not much activation of like that muscle group. Here's why. And take that opportunity to we are like working, and the athletic trainer is very comfortable with it. We talked about it, like no concerns. We started with a lighter weight to make sure it wasn't going to bug them or any tightness. There wasn't. We progressed. But like using those opportunities, not necessarily in the heat of the moment. Like that's not when you always want to like state the extent of your case, because like when they're emotional and you try to like go science on them, like that usually doesn't.
It's more like you fall, like you make me lose the game. Like don't talk to them at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, no, well, I mean that's the thing. Like when those parts of the brain are activated, like you're not really using critical thinking anyway, right? Like you need to be able to get to your frontal lobe, which can't happen when the amygdala is running the show. So learning like and it happens as you build confidence over time, and you have those events that come up and you like survive them. But there's a feel in terms of like you can't, like, one, you have to have confidence in your expertise, and you have to know your stuff. And if you were wrong, you have to be able to admit that, like, yeah, that was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong. But you have to like build up that confidence over time to be able to make sure that you're able to communicate like best practice to the coach. But you also have to develop feel we call it feel, which is actually a very like baseball specific term. The feel is like knowing like when the right time or how to deliver the message to the coach, like based on like what's the current situation emotionally, how's the team playing, like when's the right time. Like I need to do a good job of educating the coach and clearing up like why we were doing what we were doing, but like knowing like when is the best time to do that, and being able to deliver the message in a way that that's like respectful and collaborative and like shared goal, and not like I know better than you. Which like in most cases you are going to know better than him or her, because it's your area of expertise, but like nobody likes that, right? Like and it's not an effective way.
Yeah. So I think you made a very, very important point about the feeling, just trying to find an appropriate time to deliver those messages. I think there's no difference of what kind of message that would be. That can be the message from strength and conditioning coach. That may be from the nutritionist, athletic trainer, and talking about like how about the sports science message, because it's kind of add up to the strength and conditioning and then the sports science, right? So you talking about like, oh, I feel like all my players are very fit, they're ready to go, and that can be the same situation. Like you have all the monitoring data, you have all the jumping and other polling data, and to show, oh, they are in the good like rate of development, and they have very powerful legs right now. So how do you like deliver those messages? Is that kind of a meeting thing, or is it like take the chart, or you have like personal profile, or how do you do that?
There's a cadence over the course of a year. So for example, like when players report at spring training, we'll do our entire test battery, and we'll go over that with our sports medicine and performance team. And then we'll put together information packets for the coach and then for the coaching staff. And then ideally, I will give them all of that information, and then I will follow up with them to discuss like the high points. And that's also like, so we'll have that exchange like very early on, but then as you go through the first like week or so of training camp, you'll also like circle back with the coach, be like, okay, what are you seeing now? Because usually, I mean, especially coaches at the major league level are like expert coaches and have unbelievable intuition, and so there's a lot of like what the monitoring data sees like corresponds to what they're seeing on the field with a player. And I think it's really important to highlight, and this goes for like all sports science, a lot of times like data is supporting like what the coach sees or believes or is gathering like with their eye and feel and all that. It's really important to like acknowledge that shared perspective like frequently when the data matches the coach. You have to highlight all of those things and be like, yeah, we see this in our data, you see that too, great. You have to highlight that, because where the real value in like the data analytics side is, it's when it doesn't agree with the coach. This is when a coach sees something and our monitoring data supports that, like we didn't learn anything. Like the data just supports what we already knew.
Yeah.
Where there's an opportunity to improve performance is when like the data does not support what the coach sees.
Yeah.
But if you're only going to the coach on those times when the data like do not agree with what the coach is saying, then the coach is going to end up like dismissing your data and be like, it's wrong. You almost have to like develop this like, yeah, like we have a pretty shared understanding here of performance from different perspectives. And that way, when they don't agree, you have the opportunity to have a conversation, because the coach like believes in like your data or monitoring processes.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like communicating over the course of a season, I think a lot of it is when you start to run into like performance problems or a player's not like performing as well as he could be. That's when like me being able to take a really deep dive into the data to see what's going on physically, so I can go back to the coach, be like, hey, here's what we see.
Yeah.
Or even it's also really important that you have like pretty consistent communication, in the sense that a player may still be performing really well, but he's headed downhill in other areas. Maybe he's having trouble keeping weight on, and he's lost like 10 pounds over the last 2 weeks, and he's starting to like, his legs are getting heavy. He's still hitting But that's the one where it's also really important to recognize that in your monitoring data and be able to bring that to the coach's attention, because maybe we need to like change something to get ahead of it before it does start to show up in the player's performance.
Yeah, so you present at the NSCA conference. Are you using the CMJ as your regular monitoring tool?
Yeah. So we do a counter movement jump on a force plate every time the players train, which is typically 2 times a week. And
2 times a week? Wow.
2 times a week. Yep.
2 times a week. Okay.
And you know, the funny thing about that is we used to jump less frequently. We've had force plates in the big leagues since 2018. We used to jump less frequently, and ironically, the less you do a test, the more it feels like they're being tested and assessed, and it's like, no, I'm not gonna jump today. Like my legs are heavy. I drank too much last night. My girlfriend's mad at me. I'm in a bad mood. Like I don't feel like it. I had 5 guys for lunch. Like the when it's like a test, you're like, oh my gosh, like it's test day. I got it. It creates like almost performance anxiety where they feel like they have to be at their best like every time, and it ends up being like a big deal, like just to like jump on the force plates. When we started doing it more regularly, like twice a week, like when you train, you jump, like that, the end. It's like, but I'm not feeling it yet. Like, that's fine. That's, we want to know that. Like, let's see what you look like when you're not feeling it. But like plenty of people have jumped poorly and hit 2 home runs. Like it's not the end all be all. When you do it more regularly, our guys are actually like used to it, and they're used to the ups and downs of like, 162 games. You're not going to be at your best every game. When we started doing it more frequently, it became less of a big deal, and they didn't have as much like performance anxiety once it was like just a part of their training. And then like from a monitoring perspective, we have like rules that we use that bucket players into minimal, moderate, or high fatigue probability. And so like they jump on the force plates, that feeds into a cloud, and we have a daily report that I get every day that I'll merge with all of their like previous game workload metrics, and it'll bucket everybody into like minimal, moderate, or high fatigue. And then anybody that flagged as moderate or high, I'll go look at the actual like force time data from the previous day and some of those calculated metrics, like what was their jump height, concentric impulse, RSI modified, peak power. Like I'll kind of look at like what was asymmetry. We have some asymmetry flags in there. I'll look at like what that jump looked like and like how bad the performance was and how it compares to previous stuff. And I'll type up some notes that I'll then share with the coaching staff and the medical and performance team like that day. Mm-hmm. So every day they'll get my notes from what things looked like the previous day in our monitoring data.
Got you. Yeah. So what brain are you?
Obviously, there's like how they're coping with training over time longitudinally too, which that's more of a like once a month, like I'll do a big report at the All-Star break and into the season when we're going into off season, like what do people need to do? But yeah.
Got you. So what brain are you using? Are you using Hawking Dynamics, or are you using the Force Stack or others?
We use Force Stacks.
You use Force Stacks. Yeah. So pretty similar to my situation. Like we took over. Like I sent you a link about we were doing the testing for the baseball guys, and we took over the strength and conditioning part of their training. And all of a sudden, we found like there's we cannot solve all answers. Like we cannot solve all the questions and try to find answers from strength and conditioning program. So we started a sort of sports science program now, and we custom-made a pitch mount, and we still kiss the force plate, batted inside, and then we bought the sensor called a 4D motion from the US. trying to put on the players to see, just try to get the general idea, because coaches always ask that kind of question, like, is lifting heavy really work? Does that really work? Yeah, but
yeah,
if they can get their hip shoulder separation good enough at the right timing, there's no point like the kids lift like 200 pounds, 250 pounds. It just doesn't work. So I think we are in the process of doing more things and trying to get an idea about how to deliver those messages. Because as you can imagine, like when we get all the data, it's all the data. They're trying to try to manipulate the data to, just like you said, like try to manipulate the data to what matches to coach's exception and what are the things you don't expect. And then that's the place we start to communicate with other supporting staff, communicate with coaches, and communicate with the players. Yeah, thank you, Austin. These are valuable information that we never gonna heard about from other people. And thank you very much to share those information with us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's about Christmas time, right? This coming week.
Yes, we got 5 days.
5 days. Happy Merry Christmas.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah, I miss the Christmas in the U.S. There's nobody in the lab. Nobody, just Mark.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep.
Everybody was gone, and
yep.
Yeah. So how about this coming July? Is that very busy for during that period of time in July?
Yeah, I mean it is. We'll be like in season at the time. I would say like I usually don't travel with the major league club. So like when they are on the road, usually days are a little more reasonable. We have really long days when the team's at home.
Yeah, I think that must be very struggle to manage. Like if you have to travel with the team to other cities and you have family with 3 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking to hosting we call it the performance summit in Taiwan. But during this kind of a COVID-19 thing, I'm not gonna invite everyone to come to Taiwan. Instead, we're gonna do the online, the virtual conference thing. And the baseball is, you probably know, like baseball is a big sport in Taiwan. Based on the WBC, like we probably the top ranking, like top 2 or top 3 in WBC. So people is very interested about all the things you just talked to us like in the past 1 hours. So I'm thinking to have a specific like NACA, they have the special interesting group. So I'm gonna have the baseball interesting group, and hope we can invite you to be our keynote speaker. And of course, we can talk about like what topics we should target on for the first time. And then if your time is available, I cannot think other people more appropriate than you to be the keynote speaker for that session.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know what dates you're thinking, and we'll obviously have our schedule by then. And depending on like what we have going on at the time, like where the team is, I should be able to figure something out.
Okay.
With the cadence of those days.
See, students, do you have any questions? We have like one question. We can ask just one more question because it's very late in the US. Anyone? No one? Really? Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's okay. if they have questions, I can send an email or just shoot you a message. This is pretty typical, like Asian style. Yeah. I can guarantee you they have tons of questions in their mind. They're just not used to speak out immediately. Like, when we were in the US, I remember when I was teaching the undergraduate kids, like every time I asked like any question, everybody raised their hands, and even they don't have questions. I say, why did you raise your hand? I don't know. I just raised my hand. You asked like, do you have questions? So I raised my hand. That's hilarious.
It's the collectivist versus individualistic culture.
Yeah, and remember Doc always say, this is not a church. You have any questions? This is not a church, because everybody was like looking down when a professor asked like, do you have any questions? Yeah. I missed the time in Tennessee. Yeah. So have you talked to Chris Bailey recently?
Not recently. Probably been like a year and a half. We usually touch base like intermittently.
See.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, you have a wonderful family with 3 kids, and your family support you to do what you love to do. It's probably the happiest things in the world.
Yeah, that if you are gonna work in this environment, you gotta have extremely supportive partner and family, or it's not gonna work. Gotcha. Or you're just not gonna last very long, because there are very few. It's pretty much impossible for your personal life to not spill over into your professional life, and so like if the support's not there and things aren't going well at home because they're not willing to back what you do, it's only a matter of time before your job performance isn't going to be very good either, just because your personal decisions affect your professional performance.
All right, so thanks again, Austin. So I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Good to see you, Mark.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Coach. Thank you, Coach.
All right, see you. Talk to you soon.哎，怎么这么安静啊？是听不懂还是真的没问题啊？真的没问题哦。好吧。
有点无法完全理解。
OK， 好，这个可能这个场域对我来讲还蛮熟悉的。轩宇，你有问题？你说。
刚刚就是一瞬间想到说，因为他在过程中有举到一个例子是说，他的教练看到有个选手是他在跑步的时候拉伤脚，然后又看到刚好黑板上面写他背蹲很重，然后就有点质疑他说他的选手是不是因为做这个导致他受伤，这样就把他联想起来。那个教练有说，他跟教练沟通的方式是在比较情绪缓和的状态下跟他说，这位选手呢过去好的表现的时候也经历了相同的类似的训练，所以就这个案例呢是教练试图跟专项教练讲说，不一定是因为这个训练造成他表现不好。那我本来想问教练说，有没有其他案子是教练要证明说真的不是因为我们的训练导致他表现不好，然后他要试图说服专项教练这件事情，有没有其他
？Sherry, does that really matter?
没有啊，就突然想到就是。
But your question is your answer. You're trying to argue who was right and who was wrong. 对不对？你试着比如说像我们都会试着解释嘛，对不对？我们想要跟教练解释说为什么会这样，然后什么的。当然解释是有必要的。但是谁对谁错真的那么重要吗？其实他刚才或许在这个你们在吸收 6-7成但其实我觉得因为他是在讲他现在工作的事情嘛，那我们现在是在面对我们现在的这个状况。其实你没有发现，其实状况跟我们很像嘛？就是当不同的专业之间发生这些冲突的时候，其实大家在乎的点是不是从运动员的角度出发？那当大家情绪都很高涨的时候，比如说，其实他刚才讲那个状况是那个投手，他是在讲投手，他那一场比赛滑球丢不好了，然后滑球丢不好，就教练就看到他在做背蹲这样，然后就发飙了，那是 manager 就他们的那个总经理，所以你看他刚才就讲了，在他们的这个场域里面，任何人都可以随时被废掉任何人，你知道这个就是台湾，我们在台湾很难发生的事情。那当你今天如果你的场域这么高压的时候，每个人都必须要战战兢兢的。老实讲，你很少有人看到就是有一个人吊儿郎当这样，因为反正他就觉得反正我这样也没差就是这个其实是我们面对一个很大的挑战，在那边大家都是很兢兢业业去把自己的工作做好。但有时候，比如说就像他刚才提那些，比如说你看我一直跟他说。那讲讲那个有没有发生冲突的例子，就是 confrontation 的那种例子。然后我们每个人都有我们自己的 ego 嘛，我们每个人都有自己的自豪的地方，我们自己认为的专业。但是他其实他在表述的一点是说，把自己的工作，比如说这些记录做好，但是不一定是去用这来去争辩说谁输或是谁赢，但是更重要的应该是找对的时机点去沟通。所以我才会从那个地方去跟他切入说，那请他跟我们分享，那假设是不是在 sport science 里面，我们也应该要用这样的方式，或是他们怎么用？对，所以你们现在要学习的就是，有时候我们中文就讲了，就是要见缝插针就有时候你去跟教练去讲这个事情的时候，你也要观察一下那个时候适不适合去讲。正在输球，大家这个情绪很低落，你去跟他解释说，那可是他那个时候之前做背蹲，我记录他是没事的中文就是叫做白目就是白目嘛，你今天讲这个干嘛呢？所以这一些都是没有标准答案。我想在他的领域，在我们领域都没有标准答案，但是懂得观察懂得察言观色，懂得找对的时机点去切入才是可以你看嘛，他们讲他们现在在这个组织里面有这么多不同的专业，每个专业都想要证明自己是对的你懂那种感觉吗？谁会觉得说我今天念书念到硕士毕业博士毕业我是错的？每个人都想要证明自己是对的，但是你用什么方法可以去跟人家合作，比你一直告诉人家说你是对的可能更重要。这是一点嘛。那第二点可能就是我想他也一直在这里面去提醒，比如说在做检测，你看我们最后问那个，因为我会知道是因为他在前一阵子在那个 NACA 的会议上面，他其实很好笑，他其实丢了一个 CNJ 的图，然后在那会议上面试着解释他们是这样在做，可是你知道吗？大概观众里面在90%听不懂他在干嘛，90%，因为他们只要一看到 CNJ 的 force time curve， 他们就花了，你知道吗？他们根本不知道那是什么。然后 Austin 就讲得很快，因为他的 session 只有20分钟，他讲很快，就说你看研究发现这个人发现可以监测疲劳，然后这个人发现什么但是有一些不行什么的。那其实我刚才本来很想吐槽他说，其实我听你讲完，我根本听不懂你在讲什么。但是后来就想说算了，你们都在那边，我私底下我就会这样吐他但是重点其实是你听他刚才讲，如果今天把它当成一个 big deal 99测一次，大家就是用那种心态这样子。就用那种我非一定要怎么样，不然我就会怎么样。可是他刚才你看，我还跟他 double check，他们1个礼拜测2次他说只要做肌力的时候，因为他们就是赛季当中1个礼拜做2次肌力，然后只要做肌力就做。所以当 data 量够多的时候，大家也把这个当作是训练的一部分了。然后他是 performance director 嘛，他会在这个比如说赛季开始、赛季结束做一个比较大份的报告。然后在中间呢，他会先把这些收到的这些数据，用他们自己的方法先稍微去区分一下，然后区分一下真的有必要去注意的人，就会适时的提醒教练。那你告诉我这跟我们做法有什么不一样？你告诉我，你们各位告诉我，这跟我们做法有不一样吗？我们不是每周在做周回报的时候，就是类似像这样子吗？ 对，我们不要把它当成是这个很什么大不了的事情，但是我们必须要适时的去提醒有哪一些必须要注意的地方。如果真的要注意，没有注意到那可能就会是我们的疏失。对，所以其实我想在这种做法里面呢，可能是比较实际的啦，就是说要让这件事情可以顺利的运作，比起我做一个多了不起的检测更重要。那当然他就讲了，你看开季什么都测啊，该测的时候就什么通通都要测，所以开始也去养成他们有这种习惯。不过你看他 MLB 人家已经玩100多年了，100多年，他说从2016年才开始，各位现在才2021年快结束所以我想透过他来去讲这件事情，应该是很有说服力啦。意思就是说，其实我们在做的事情也没有落后人家太多啊，或者是说我们面对到挑战啊，层级可能不同，但是只要你做这件事，其实会碰到问题都很像。对，我只是希望透过他的嘴巴跟各位讲，不要每次都是听我讲。因为这些我经历过2种不同的国家，所以我会知道其实都很像，会碰到问题其实都很像。那解决方法就很不一样了，因为国情不同。你看，像他们还有多米尼加的，就是他们在他们的 organization 里面，他们组织里面还有一批人是在拉丁美洲的，所以我相信拉丁美洲一定有他们的那种讲话的习惯啊。风俗民情啊，那一样我们在台湾我们有台湾的这个习惯跟风俗民情，所以不一定有标准答案，但是原则上面都很类似，你看他们也做过头啊，但是他刚才也讲了非常多的理由，为什么他们不能去做这些举重的动作，他也都讲了，所以我想他提到一个重点就是说。如果你的这个体能表现全部都是最好，我们当然很开心啦。我们身为体能教练、运科员，我们当然很开心但是你比赛一直输你会开心吗？对，他刚才就是讲到这一点那人家会觉得那是你的功劳吗？你只会一直跟人家吹嘘说你体能是最好，然后呢，你又不会赢。所以你看，这个我想这一些话真的是只有真正在执行这件事情的人。就是类似像我们这样，我们才讲得出这种话，否则其实大部分人论点就是我管他，反正体能好比较重要啊。那你就是没有站在其他人的角度来去思考这件事情。大致上是这样。好，那等一下呢，就是各自去做各自的事情了那棒球组的就是博伟这个，你的那个报告，等一下我过去的时候还是要把它投出来。就是我们就是先抓一点这样子，那我现在还要去开另外一个会，我们今天就先到这边，那下礼拜大家记得下礼拜要口试的人就算是正式的报告了，正式报告，所以正式报告的意思就是说，硕士生呢，我们就是抓半小时，不超过半小时，所以你不要再什么我只练什么方法什么，你要整个都要练习过。那建存这个地方呢，就是抓1小时，1小时必须要把3个 study 要讲完，所以下礼拜会花蛮多时间在这上面，就算是最后的冲刺这样子，如果真的不好的话，还有时间可以改。那我跟你们约的时间应该是礼拜4下午，就是一一去讨论你们写作的东西，这应该是礼拜4下午。那1年级的部分呢，因为我看到你们昨天晚上有传嘛，所以我会花一点时间。看完之后再给你们回馈这样子，看起来比第1版好多了，你们不觉得第1版有点奇妙吗？就是那个关系强度通写在上面这样子，好像感觉是要凑字数，所以请现在有这个参考的那个模式就先这样子看，然后先把它投出去，投出去之后呢，就要准备那个报告了，所以报告就不像这个摘要这么简单了我要先跟你们讲。因为报告你就等于是要把这整个研究方法全部都要把它列出来了 ，OK？ 好，那个要考单字的不要忘记大哥，对，害他很尴尬，你知道吗？他刚才也很尴尬这样子，怎么这样好像都没有人这样子？好，
荧幕关掉。
轩宇有问题吗？
没有，是刚刚举的手吧？
听不到。
你没开。
好像没有，那是刚刚那个举的手没有消掉，不好意思。
啊，对，好，我这边等一下啊，对不起，我有最后一件事情。好，我需要请轩瑜先把目前全校大检测的进度再帮我更新一下。那主要更新的部分是各位的检测报告。好，各位的检测报告，你先不要算，因为有些队伍他12分钟跑还没有结束，但是你那一队的检测已经结束了。好，所以我们上次好像没有去讨论到这件事情，就是基本上就是你负责的队伍检测结束之后1个礼拜之内，你就要缴交报告，最后只是把这个12分钟的资讯再加上去。好，这样我跟轩宇这边才可以去讨论说，我们什么时候要去那一些队伍要去把这些资讯要给他们。好，所以请轩宇再帮我更新一下资讯，就是现在已完成，然后谁还没有完成他的报告的部分。OK，
可以。
好，那我们今天就 meeting 就到这边，好，拜拜。
下次。